Well, this has been sitting around far too long, and so I'm gonna go ahead and show you how we're gonna mock it up to turn this twin headboard into a bench. And then we might finish it all out, we might not. So this is just something that I went to someone's house and bought something. I forgot what it was. This was months and months and months ago, and I saw this just sitting out there, and they had just had a yard sale, and this did not sell. And they had this for 10 bucks, but they just gave it to me. And it was just too nice to not take it because it's a nice solid wood frame, all of this solid wood. And I thought, man, it's gonna make a really cute little bench. So that's basically what we're gonna do. So we've got our headboard, which we're not gonna really touch the headboard. It's the footboard that we're gonna modify. Now, when we're making beds out of bed frames, there's a variety of different ways to do it, and I looked at every possible configuration I could think of. Sometimes you turn the footboard upside down and do all this crazy stuff. So I looked at it. I don't want to spend. I don't want it to cost a lot of money when it's all said and done. And I don't want it, so therefore I cannot spend a lot of time on it. So I looked at every which way, and I figured out, well, this is what we're gonna go with, okay? So what we're gonna do here is we're gonna take our footboard, and from the front of our footboard back, we're gonna have this, I'm probably gonna come back 16 inches deep, okay? And then you see where this is hitting this, okay? So we're gonna come back here and whack this off at 16. I don't know exactly where that is, but it's gonna hit up here. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cut just a little bit off my foot to lower this down so it hits, boom, right there. Because then I can run a screw from the back side. I'll put some bucket hole screws here, tie that into here, and then we'll build a new base for it. So my first step is gonna be cutting this back here as square as I can to 16 inches. That's going to be my first step. So I'm going to go ahead and get that done, and then we'll take a look at our next step. So there are our two halves cut. These are going to be the sides of our bench, and you can see what I did. There was another piece down here, and so right where those two pieces connected, I just gave them a little whack. Now let's see if we could show you how this is all gonna line up. Just give you an idea. So this is gonna line up. So you see there where that's just gonna come right into that perfectly, just like so. So that's gonna work out just great for the arms of our bench. So I'm gonna go ahead and get those attached, and then we can look at building the base for our bench. Well, we now have our arms attached to our headboard, and you can see we did in fact make some 3/4 inch pocket hole screws, use 1¼ inch screws into our post here, and then from the back side we use 1 4-inch deck screw for this top post. So this is fairly sturdy. Now what we're going to do is we're going to have to build some kind of seat frame for the seat itself. And what we're looking for is we're looking for a finished seat height of 18 inches. We're going to be using 1.5 inch material for the thickness of our seat. And so therefore we want, if we're using 18 and we take off an inch, that's 17. So our horizontal board for our seat base up front here is going to be at 16.5. We add 1.5 inches to that. That will give us a finished seat height of 18 inches. And then we need to do the same for the back here. But so when I measured up from the base, 16.5 is like way up here. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna measure from the outside of this to the outside of this, and we're going to put a board, and we're going to tack the board in this way to this post. So that'll give us nice support. And then we'll have a board running this direction from front to back as well. Okay, so we're going to be using 2x3s for our seat base. And then we're going to be using 2x6s for the actual seat boards themselves. So I'm going to go ahead and do some measurements and get those pieces in. So up front here, we'll use pocket holes. And then in the back, we're just going to go through the face of our 2x3, because that'll be hidden anyhow on the finished product. And we'll just go through the face into these with probably 2.5-inch screws. So let me get that done, and then we'll show you what that looks like. Starting to look like something. So now all I'm going to do is put in a couple of boards going this direction. And something else I kind of want to think about too is how we're going to attach our horizontal bench boards to our base. And so what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to lay these boards going this way flat. I think they're still plenty strong in doing it that way, and we can be able to screw up from the bottom our planks that are going to go on top here. Okay, so you see here we have the 2.5-inch going in to this material, and this is like mahogany or something. It's a very hard wood, so I would definitely recommend that we pre-drill so we don't accidentally split this out. So that's something to consider when you're doing it. And then on the inside here, you can see we used 1.5-inch pocket holes with 2.5-inch pocket hole screws going into our post. So I measured up from the bottom, 1.5 inch, 1.5 inch, and so now this is totally flat here. So I just need to measure the distance between here and here, and I'm going to make 1, 2, 3, and like I said, I think I'm going to lay them flat, and then we can take a look at making our other boards. And because we're using pocket holes already, I'm going to go ahead and use pocket holes to put in these other boards, and that way we won't see any screw holes on the outside and we won't have to patch them up. I am going to fill this slot that would have held the rails there. Again, I'm not going to worry about filling the pocket hole screws, because once we get it all put together and it sits on the ground, you'd never see that. And I'm not going to worry about the screw holes on the back side, because it's the back, so you won't see that either. So we won't have a lot of patching to do on this one. All right, so let me go ahead and get these support boards in place, and then we can take a look at our next step, which would be our seat boards. So you can see what we did there. We have these laying flat with some pocket holes. We're using 2.5-inch screws. So there we have all that set up for our seat boards. So now what we're going to do is flip this over and take a look at what we're going to have to do for our seat boards. So I went ahead and cut my first board here, and this is roughly the same length, or same width rather, as our headboard was. So it's 40 5/8 is what we're going to cut our seat boards. Now we're using 2x6s, and one of the reasons that we went with a 16-inch, remember that first dimension was 16? 3 2x6s is 16.5. So that 2x6 is actually, the final one, is actually going to come just ahead of this horizontal board. So what that means is we're going to have to do a little bit of notching on that very front board to notch around our post. So the first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and cut my other two, and then we'll take a look at how we're going to notch around those posts. But starting to look like something now. So let me go ahead and get those cut, and then we'll come back and take a look at how we're going to notch that out. Okay, so we have all of our seat boards cut. Now we've got to do the notch. And to do the notch is pretty straightforward. If you look at what we have here, we have an 1.5 inch thickness of our 2x3. So we know we've got to notch out at least that much, because this is gonna actually overhang this. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna mark where the post is, just a, you know, a tiny little gap. So I know that's where my mark's gotta be to fit left to right. And so what I'm gonna start with is I'm gonna start by cutting, notching. I'm gonna measure. So I'm gonna measure straight back using my carpenter square, and then measure 1.5 inches, and at least cut that much. And see, and then just physically fit it and see how far off I am. And I know I'm gonna have to notch probably at least probably 2 inches. But I don't wanna do 2 inches straight off and then have a big gap on the back side. So I'd like to kind of creep up on that, if you will. So let me cut out 1.5 inches, just show you what that looks like. And then I'm sure we're gonna have to go another 1/2 inch. Probably another 5/8 to 3/4 after that. But let me just see where we're at. So we have our initial 1.5 inch notch, right? But you can see what I was talking about, how much more we're off on the depth, okay? So we know we gotta cut at least that more off. Now, on the width, we're dead on, right where we wanna be. But so we just gotta cut this back that amount. So I'm gonna measure how much it's still overhanging, add 1/8 of an inch to what that measurement is, and then measure and cut. So what I did was I wound up taking another 7/8 of an inch off, and you can see now that we have as good of a fit as we could have. Okay, we're matching square with round, so it's tough to get it just exactly perfect, but it's gonna look good. What we're gonna, and the nice thing is that this overhang is nice and equal all the way across, which of course it should be. So I'm gonna just take this and round over these edges just a little bit, and that is really gonna be it for this one. I am a builder primarily, so I am gonna post this built, and then if somebody wants to buy it just as is, great. And then if they want it all finished, then we can do all the paint and stain and everything else. So I will demonstrate it just like it sits first, and then if it doesn't sell, then I'll go ahead and finish it out however I see fit. But I'll probably stain the seats and then paint everything else. And then, you know, we could do something really nice back here. We could add a stencil of a person's name or a monogram, or you know, if this was a wedding gift, you could do the couple's name and maybe a Bible verse along the bottom, and then their wedding date. I mean, you know, you could sell a lot of different ideas. Of course, customization sells. So that's just something to think about, doing some offerings that way as well. So I hope you enjoyed this one, and got a little sneak peek at some of the different builds that we do. We don't do a lot of this type of construction, but this just spoke to me. It was a nice piece, and I knew it would make for a really beautiful bench. If you haven't already subscribed, please do. We'd like to get to 1,000 subscribers so we can keep doing these types of videos for you. Thanks for watching.